can't be the only one that when I first saw the trailer for this movie and I saw the name pop up for who directed it, my immediate reaction was this.
No. There is another.
So I just got to see The Watchers, the brand new film from Ishana Night Shyamalan, the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, of course, also known as
M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
One of the most, controversial filmmakers, I'll say, in Hollywood. Controversial in the sense that he's one of these guys that does a great service to cinema. And what I mean by that is he makes a lot of original films that are original concepts on decent-sized budgets that would not be able to be made on other, film productions by other studios. But because he owns his own, he's able to make these original films on a consistent basis. It's just, a lot of them are terrible. Some are good, some are really good, but a lot are goofy and terrible. It's like his own genre of film. You know what you're getting when you get an M. Night Shyamalan film. You're getting goofy, bad dialogue, but sometimes very interesting with, of course, a fat twist at the end. So now we have his daughter making this new film, The Watchers. I believe that she has made something else. She made a TV show for Apple that I have not watched, so I will not comment on that. So what is The Watchers about? Well, it follows a 28-year-old artist who gets stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in the Western Ireland. She finds shelter, unknowingly becoming trapped alongside 3 other strangers who are being stalked by a mysterious creature at night. I will say this film had a really great trailer, a trailer that hooked me. I think the actual concept of this movie, of this weird facility with this one-way mirror in the middle of this forest, where on the other side, there are creatures, unknown creatures standing right there watching them every single night, and they have to do different things to survive, I guess. That in and of itself, although a concept that in other ways has been kind of done before, it's not exactly too original, it is intriguing enough to get you seated for the film. But unfortunately, this film ends up having a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and it just ends up being a dud. And not really an entertaining dub in the way that a lot of M. Night Shyamalan films can end up being fun to watch poop fests. This movie is just poop, and it's not really fun to watch, and it's kind of unfortunate. Now, this film is based off a novel that I have not read, so I'm not going to judge that, but it is a popular novel that has decent reviews, so I'm going to assume this movie just did not adapt it well. I'm not going to be talking about that. So if you're here like, oh, the book is so good, I'm sure it is. So where do I start with this movie? First off, the characters here. Of course, this is a movie that needs to rely on its characters. It's a movie that follows this main character as she makes her journey into this forest and gets stranded there with 3 other characters who are supposed to sort of sell the trauma of the situation and sell the world, the scares, and everything. This movie is one that relies heavily on its characters and the actors performing them, and unfortunately, the characters here are absolutely boring. Now it starts with Mina, our main character, who is the most standardized main character you can ever get in a horror film. There is absolutely nothing about her that becomes memorable, and unfortunately the actress here, although not really given much, just does not do too much more to elevate this character. Dakota Fanning is an actress that I really like. I just don't think this is one of her strongest outings. But yet again, it's just poorly written. There's a sequence early in the film where they want you to know that this character's a little bit different, and she's not exactly comfortable in her own skin. So they set up this idea that she sometimes on weekends will go out to bars and wear wigs and pretend to be somebody else, make up a story about how she's a ballerina, and you just lie to feel better about herself, I guess. And they show that whole sequence, and then the next scene is her in a car, and instead of just letting that kind of sit by itself, letting the audience watch that sequence and understand kind of what this character's about, they instead have her legitimately look into the camera and explain what you're supposed to be feeling. She looks in and she goes, hey, well, if you knew me, you wouldn't like me, so that's why I do this. And it's just like little things like that it feels like the writer of this movie, and I'm not sure if Shyamalan wrote the movie herself or not, but it felt like they were just not as confident in their filmmaking that they wouldn't be able to sell this character without having them look directly at the audience and tell them what they're supposed to feel. But when you do that, it automatically makes us not like the characters. That's just how it usually works, and that's just one small example. There's a lot of that in this movie. Once you actually get to the location that this film is taking place of, you have 3 other characters that you introduce to, 2 of which are not memorable and are as boring as it possibly gets, and 1 that's slightly more interesting. So you have the 2 younger ones. You have this one chick who is a wife. Her husband ended up being killed at this place. At least she doesn't really know that. But the audience does, because you see it in the opening scene of the movie. But she's there, and she's just kind of like this weird girl that dances sometimes, and she wants to get out. And then you have this other dude who's just sort of the young, unpredictable douchebag, and you don't really know why he's like that. You get a little bit of a backstory, but not really, and he's just there to be kind of a dick. And then, of course, you get Madeline, who I think is the best part of this whole movie. I think the actress that plays her does a brilliant job, and she plays this woman who has been here the longest, and she's wise, and she has this set of rules, and she wants to survive, but she also doesn't want any chicanery. And she definitely brings the most to this film, the most energy, and the most, like, whenever she's on screen, the audience kind of feels safe. And I kind of like when you have a character like that who brings a certain confidence and wisdom to a role role that you feel comfortable with them and you enjoy watching them, and she did a great job in this movie. Now, what about the scares? At the end of the day, this is a horror movie. I will say, it's not scary. And one of the reasons is because of the way the film decides to actually present its scares. Once you get into the situation, it becomes clear that the things that are watching these people are just straight up kind of monsters, generic sort of monsters. And when you actually slowly start to see them throughout the movie, as they're sort of revealed to you, they're not that terrifying. And the things that they do to the characters, both unclear and unsatisfying, are also not terrifying. And the characters are also, throughout most of this movie, never in any real certain danger. There's one sequence where you can kind of feel it's like a chase. You can feel the fingers on the back of your neck, and it's a little tense and suspenseful, but never at any point in this movie did you really feel like these characters were struggling to survive. And there's a lack of suspense here that's really brought on by just how slow a lot of this feels. And it's weird, because I'm going to say something at the end of this video that makes my comment saying this movie feels slow just really weird. But this movie does feel like it takes forever, but it's also flying through different beats. And you're seeing a lot, but you're also seeing nothing. And I'm trying to get through this without spoiling, but you're seeing these characters do a lot and go through a lot, but you're also not getting to know them at all, and you don't care about them. So it ends up being boring and kind of a slog. And then we get to the latter half of the movie where you get your big, like, typical Shyamalan movie sequence where you get a big exposition dump where they kind of explain everything that's going on to you, and that's when the movie really just dropped the ball for me, because they explain to you what's going on, and I just sat there thinking, this still doesn't really make any fucking sense. This is not practical, and it's not, I don't want to say it's dumb, but it's just not fleshed out enough for me to care, and the way they bring this information to the audience is just a giant exposition dump. There's really nothing visual or engaging about it. It doesn't immerse you in what's going on. It just tells you, and you just don't care. And the last few minutes of this movie, like the last 10-15 minutes, this movie goes somewhere really, really different, and it's trying to say something really unique and provoke certain emotions from the audience, but it just doesn't. It felt like you're watching a completely different movie, the third act of this film. It just becomes something else, and maybe attached to a different film or a different story, it could work, but on this film, it doesn't really work at all, and it becomes another kind of bad Shyamalan twist that just doesn't feel satisfying. It's just like a dud. This movie also has a really weird score. It's a beautiful score. Like, it's so beautiful and hypnotizing and magical, but it does not fit this movie whatsoever. It's almost like a fantasy score. I felt like I was watching, like, Lord of the Rings, and I guess it makes sense once you get into the movie and you figure out sort of what's going on here. It kind of makes sense, but it just doesn't fit the tone of the movie at all. But it is a beautiful score. I liked listening to it. I enjoyed it. But there's something I gotta say about this movie. I feel like this film would have worked better as a limited series or as like a small season of television, because there is like a unique world here and a unique situation here that if it was allowed time to flesh out each individual part of it, I feel like it could have been better. If we had time to just spend with the characters and their backstories and their situations of how they led here, the history of this place, why and how everything here was built, what's the idea with these monsters and how they connect, we could really flesh out like the horror of it, and then like the sort of epilogue-y third act could have fit better. This is something that, although this movie feels long and it feels boring, I think it would have been better if it was stretched out and structured as a series versus an hour and 45-minute long movie, because this movie feels like it's trying to hit a bunch of different beats within its runtime, and the issue is it doesn't have enough time to flesh out the things that it needed to flesh out for those beats to be as satisfying as they needed to be, and what you end up getting here is a slog, an unoriginal, and just a boring horror movie that unfortunately just does not work. It's not really fun, it's not as goofy as like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, like the dialogue here is nothing crazy, but it's also not as terrible or laughable or just stupid as some of the M. Night Shyamalan dialogue we've ended up getting. So like when movies like Old, at the very least you can laugh at how dumb the dialogue is. I always laugh at that movie when the woman's tumor is growing because the time is moving faster and one of the guys is like, we have to cut out the tumor. And then they cut out the tumor. They cured cancer right there on the beach. What a movie. But this movie just doesn't have anything goofy enough like that to at least make this worth like a rewatch and make it fun. And unfortunately, it's not great. I didn't enjoy this one, and I hate to hate on it. But I'm gonna give The Watchers, I'll give it a 1.5 out of 5. I mean, it wasn't offensive, but it's just not a movie that I'm probably gonna remember past filming this video, which really sucks, because I liked the trailer, and I had high hopes for this. despite the fact that it was made by a Shyamalama Ding Dong. I don't know. What did you guys think of the movie? Let me know down below if I was wrong, right, whatever. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more. I upload every single day, so please subscribe, turn on notifications, and come revisit me. I post every day, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.